Dawn of Sorrow is a follow-up to the last GBA game in the trilogy that existed on, well, that system, and boy, let me tell you, I have some things to say about Dawn and Soma's second outing into the world of Castlevania. I will say outright that the gameplay is fun, plenty of weapons, plenty of souls, for better or for worse, and trust that I will get into the nitty-gritty on those. I have thoughts. There's more than enough castle to explore, and some awesome music to boot, and, I mean, that's kind of it. Now, don't get me wrong, the game overall is fun, but it feels, I don't know, lacking? You might be wondering about that and saying things like, "But Leon, this game is highly rated and beloved by the fans. The tactical soul system is the best and is far better than the glyphs in Order of Ecclesia and gives way more depth than even having two characters on screen." Or, I don't, something like that, anyway. And to some degree, you're right, but I'm inclined to disagree. Why is that? Well, stick around and I'll give my thoughts and impressions about this game. There's a lot to like here, but it feels almost unnecessary. Hey everyone, my name is Leon and I'm going to spend the next however long taking a hard look at Dawn of Sorrow and how it's possible to have too much of a good thing. Welcome to the Castlevania Retrospective.
From this day on, the Belmont clan will hunt the night!
So surprisingly, there's a decent amount of stuff to look up and bring to the forefront when talking about this game's development. Is what I would say if all the articles listed as reference on the wiki weren't just, I don't know, missing? All I could find was a video featuring a guy named Matt Knowles, who was a project manager at Konami back when this game was on the precipice of releasing. Strangely, the video is labeled as interview number 2, but I can't find interview 1, because again, most of the articles look like this, or this, when searched, and unfortunately the Wayback Machine was down, which I guess explains this screenshot here. Bad timing on my part, I guess. How dare I try to research? If you're interested, I linked that interview down below. It's like a 3-ish minute long video, but it doesn't really talk about anything outside of, I don't know, general PR type statements. It really goes to show just how important it is to keep good records about how stuff like this is made. Anyway, I don't want to just rehash the wiki article, mostly because I believe the majority of you can read. And also, while I do think I might be able to narrate a book or something, I doubt y'all came here just to listen to me read a website. I will say, I found one point in that wiki article somewhat interesting to learn, and that is the reason that they made the pivot from the gothic-inspired art style of Ayami Kojima to a more generic anime style, and that would continue to be the focus on this game and of Portrait of Ruin. It would somewhat get reverted back in Order of Ecclesia. The reason they were making these games more anime was because they were on the Nintendo DS. Aria of Sorrow didn't hit sales expectations, and they figured it was because of the Nintendo user base for the GBA being much younger. I guess gothic art stylings made the games appear more adult in nature, which, I mean, fair, it is about vampires and whatnot, but also, really? They swapped styles just to lure in younger players? I get it. Toonami was pretty big at the time, and anime was kind of reaching critical mass in the mid to late 2000s here in the US, so I understand the why. It's just, yikes, man. Talk about a sudden and hard pivot. From what I could gather, plenty of reviewers were not exactly happy about the sudden change in art direction, and that kind of trickled down into the player base as well. Lots of people still love the game, but it's not really because of the anime influence. If anything, people love it in spite of that to a degree. That shows in the general review scores as well. Generally speaking, the game has a strong A average, which is impressive considering. Man, I really wish there were more articles and stuff to pull from. I would love to know more intricate details about the hows and the whys of this game. I feel like there is quite the story to dig up on all the decisions made here. Like, why did they make another Soma game? I have heard it's because they wanted to dig more into the tactical soul system, and like, that's cool, but tell me why though? What was the hope? What was the driving force behind that? Was it to get more story out of Soma, or was it simply about the mechanics of the game? There could have been so many outcomes, but unfortunately all of those interviews are just gone. It's kind of sad, really. Anyway, this is about all I have for you. I mean, the people who worked on this game were all the same, coming fresh off of Aria of Sorrow, minus, of course, Miss Kojima and her artwork. So, yeah, that's kind of it. This game carries a lot of its core functions from its prequel Aria of Sorrow, the tactical soul system. This is the main way to acquire new skills and powers. They get broken down into 3 groups, and luckily you get 3 right at the start of the game. There are a bunch, and I mean a bunch of souls. Just about every monster in the game has a soul. There are very few that don't. Many of these souls you can get just kind of offhandedly by taking out the monsters you encounter as you encounter them. You don't really need to do anything special, it's just like an item drop in almost any other Metroidvania game like this. If you've played Aria, then you already know what's going on here. If you haven't, then let me break it down for you Barney style. Souls come in 3 groups: Bullet, Guardian, and Enchanted. Technically, there is a 4th type of soul, Ability Souls, but those are hyper passive and act a lot like artifacts from the other games and allow for enhanced movements like double jump or high jump. Bullet Souls are red and they allow for a bunch of traditional magic powers. Think fireball, bone throwing, things that are reminiscent of sub-weapons. Guardian Souls are blue and they allow for a wide array of abilities, from spinning a lance around to hovering in place and moving at incredible speeds. They have a bunch of uses and some are way more valuable than others. Enchantment Souls are yellow, gold, yellowish gold. They do things like enhance your stats and resistances to certain attack types, and they can cover some other niche use cases. Together, they make up your kit, along with some equipment, and I do mean some. I'm not entirely sure why, but Soma can only equip 3 items on his person. 6, I guess, if you want to get technical with the doppelganger soul, but that's more like equipment swapping, rather than, just opening up new equipment slots. Soma can equip a weapon, 1 defensive chest piece, and 1 accessory at a time. But once you get that doppel soul, then you can have 2 sets of 3 items and 2 sets of 3 souls on either your A or B loadout. This is super limited in comparison with later titles, and even with a few earlier ones. I'm not sure why they went this route, but they did. Soma feels pretty limited in this way when it comes to things like farming, and we'll touch on that later on. Farming has some problems. I digress though. Like I mentioned earlier, you will encounter a bunch of these souls as you explore the castle and take on some of the monsters. Soma has a ton of options to choose from, and a bunch of them play really nice with each other. And if you manage certain combos, you can get enhanced effects. It's fun and engaging to mix and match things to see what best fits your particular playstyle. At base, Soma moves kinda slow, and his jump height is fine. By the end of the game, though, you find so many items to help in both of these regards that it almost doesn't matter that much. Just get comfy with his base movement speed for now. Soma is able to use a bunch of different weapons. You have most of the standards that you would expect: swords, lances, knives, fist weapons. Some are large and take pretty long to swing, some are fast and can hit in rapid succession. By far, though, the most entertaining are the gun-based weapons.
Oh shit, she's packing heat!
Yeah, that's right. Soma can just straight up shoot things, and I don't know, I find that kinda hilarious. Oh, what's that? A demon made of pure iron and is near unkillable? Pew! These giant wargs? Pew pew! That's right. Soma just pulls up with a 9, ready to go. It cracks me up every time. Try running a pistol sometime if you haven't. It's legit funny. Oh god, what if Dracula had a gun?
Die, monster! You don't belong in this world!
What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets! But enough talk! How about you?
A lot of this game's mechanics can kind of simply boil down to whether or not you have certain souls to progress forward. The ones you need will just kind of fall into your lap for the most part. There are a few areas that require you to go out of your way to get certain souls, or strangely, even certain amounts of money. It's an odd thing, but that's the choice that they made. Now, one of the more interesting things is Yoko's Soul Fusion shop. You can seek her out and upgrade weapons using monster souls. This is how you can get some of the best weapons in the game. Why yes, I do think I'll take the mobile blender, thank you. Some things can be found out in the world or just as regular monster drops, but this is by far the best way to up your weapon damage. Now armor, you're gonna have to find that as you move throughout the castle. It's not really that big of a deal. Nothing does crazy damage, assuming you keep up with armor drops, or whatever you can find while you're on the move anyway. Hammer is also back, and his shop is, it's a shop. Talking with him and Yoko both progresses a storyline about a one-sided love affair. It's odd, but I guess they needed to give Hammer something to justify him being here. Hammer has a few fun items that you can buy, magazine pages that give hints on rare monster encounters, as well as the Soul Eater ring. If you want to collect souls, this is going to be your best friend, or maybe your worst enemy. I guess it depends. At any rate, it's 300,000 gold, so, save up. I say that because you're going to want as many souls as possible, not only for item crafting, but also because it's just how you power up the magic that you use. Many of these souls require you to collect 9 of that one particular soul to get it to max. Now, is that really needed? No, not really, not at all. You can just kind of cruise through the game and not bother to engage all that much and still come out on the other end just fine. But if you like to fill up the soul list and get that chaos ring, then yeah, you got some work cut out for you. Alright, a few last things to check off here. There are magic circles and other stylus style block breakers. The magic circles get introduced fairly early, and at first they don't seem like that big of a deal, but the endgame ones can get a bit messy. The idea back on the DS was to draw the seal using the stylus at the end of every boss fight to take out the monster permanently. What this meant was, well, back then anyway, you'd come up to a boss room, take out the stylus, and then fight. Once the monster was defeated, the seal would flash on screen, show you what you needed to draw, and then ask you to do the same thing. If you forgot to have the stylus out and at the ready, then it guaranteed that the boss would revive with 10% of its health, and the fight would continue until you got the pattern down. This was not a very fondly remembered mechanic. In fact, over the years, it was effectively patched out by players when you emulate the game. You can find a ROM that just kind of auto-completes these, effectively making it play like any other Castlevania. The Dominus Collection also turns these into QuickTime-like events, and that's fine. It's a good compromise. If you're playing on the Switch though, and in handheld mode, they work just like they did on the DS, so there's that, I suppose. There's another boss soul that allows you to break these ice blocks using the stylus. You can just use the right thumbstick to take care of these, or, again, on the Switch, you can use the touchscreen. That's your call. Other than that, there really isn't much more to talk about here. If you've played Aria, then you'll find this to be more of the same, for better or for worse. Alright, we're going to be changing things up a bit here. Let's talk story, because I have some things I need to say about this. I won't delve too deep into Aria of Sorrow, this game's direct prequel. I'll be getting to that in due time, but I do need to talk overall about what that game was about in order to correctly frame this game and its attempt at a story. If any of you want to jump ahead to more opinion-type stuff, jump down to this timecode here. I'll try to keep it as spoiler-free as possible after the story recap, but, well, the key word there is try. We good? Okay, let's take it from the top then. Let's lay out the groundwork. Soma, our main protagonist, is the reincarnated soul of the Lord of Darkness himself, Dracula. That's right, the Demon Castle War of 1999 came to pass, and finally, after a whole millennia, the Belmont clan had fulfilled their duty and had finally taken out Dracula for good. Julius Belmont had succeeded where even the best Belmonts of old had failed. He killed Dracula, and in doing that, Dracula's soul, or I guess the soul of Matthias Kronqvist, was finally released and could begin the process of being reborn. But you can't keep a good Dark Lord down. Somehow, his power was split, and right at the moment of Dracula's demise, many children were born. These kids were brought into this world right as Dracula died, leading many occult members who followed Dracula throughout the ages to hunt these kids down and essentially groom them, more or less, into becoming the next Dark Lord. Some candidates stood out amongst the others, and they were chosen to move on to the next steps in this transformation. Fun fact, if you were born in 1999 during a lunar eclipse, then there is a solid chance that you, yes you, might be a Dark Lord candidate. Don't let it go to your head though, it's not all it's cracked up to be. At any rate, 18 years after 1999 and Dracula's death, another piece of the puzzle was born. Soma Cruz. His story technically starts here. Born in the distant year of 2017 and not really lore relevant until 2035 when Aria of Sorrow takes place, for whatever reason, Soma acquired Dracula's power of dominance, meaning he can take in the souls of monsters and use them as he sees fit. Somehow, the occult followers of Dracula found out about Soma, and, well, here we are. Skipping over the whole story of Aria, for now anyway, check back in later when that video drops, we get into the opening of Dawn. This game opens up with Soma and his girlfriend Mina just kinda hanging out in a town, and then they get assaulted by a strange woman and a handful of monsters. Soma seemingly lost all his power from Aria in the year since those events took place. Seems like Soma got the Samus special on that one, huh?
Whatever caused these changes seems to have stripped you of most abilities. You might call it physical amnesia.
It doesn't really take long before he takes in some new soul power though. Literally the strongest drop rate in the game because they force feed it to you in this opening. You will never get souls this easy again. Anyway, Soma, with the help of Genya Arakato, yes, Genya Arakato, and no one else, manages to overcome the sudden street jump and the strange woman, Celia is her name, and they just leave. Genya encourages Soma to not get involved in this as they don't want to have all that dark power that he can absorb corrupting him. Being the level-headed teenager that Soma is, he says balls to that and goes in anyway, because he just wants answers, damn it. Look, I don't know about you, but if Arakato told me to back out, I'd probably just back out. But Soma, being Soma, just dives right in with almost no plan. Solid. Also, Soma has already proven himself in Aria by not succumbing to the dark powers there, so, like, what? Are we just gonna ignore that? Or is that one of those, we got lucky last time, better not push the envelope kind of things? I mean, I'd almost believe it if that were the case, but I'm not so sure. Also, if the last game confirmed that Soma is in fact Dracula reborn, why isn't he under constant surveillance? How did he manage to even get close to Celia's base of operations? And why, oh why, are there even more Dark Lord candidates? Soma in the last game spent the entire time trying to decouple Dracula's power from its source, but I guess that did nothing? Soma can still suck souls up and command those subsequent powers at will, so, well, whatever, I guess. Let's just see where the story goes. Shortly after storming the castle, you'll encounter Yoko Belnades and Julius. Jay is not exactly happy to see you, and Yoko really isn't either, but she seems a bit less angry about it. Jay bounces out, and Yoko asks you to accompany her to a safer spot. She also teaches you about magic seals and all the fun that they bring to the table. One boss fight later, and you can really start to slowly uncover the castle. The beginning areas are fine, not a whole lot to talk about here. That said, you will quickly encounter Celia and her two goons. Okay, let's talk about these two dingleberries for a minute. Yeah, Dimitri and Dario, you'll encounter them both pretty early in the castle, technically, but that confrontation doesn't involve a fight or anything. It's supposed to be a tease of things to come, a preview, if you will, a way to introduce the mid-level antagonists. And boy, if mid ain't the best description for these guys. One, a pompous asshat, and the other dumb as a box of rocks, who looks like every I gave up in high school type, but I was on the football team, so I'm actually super cool and important. These guys suck. There's no getting around this. They lack any real personality, and why they have goals? It's the most cliche thing ever. I want to understand the deeper levels of my power. And I want to crush the weak. I've seen better villain motivations from the Powerpuff Girls. Mojo Jojo was a villain.
Oh, thank you, Father. I was once a vengeful mad genius bent on destroying mankind. But now I'm a vengeful mad genius bent on destroying mankind with superpowers.
These guys are every monster of the week from literally any Power Rangers episode where Rita Repulsa was like, oh, is that a pumpkin? Yeah, that'll work, I guess. Graham Jones from Aria was a way better villain and had a lot better of a build-up overall. It feels like a proper confrontation. These two guys feel like speed bumps, not really anything else. We'll touch on Dario soon, but let's take a look at Dimitri real quick. Dimitri here has the power to copy abilities, which, if you're a smart cookie, means you'll equip a terrible bullet soul and just kind of whack on him with a sword or whatever as he tosses bones over your head. What are you doing there, buddy? Why not just throw out a punch or something? Dimitri is an easy defeat, and you don't even need to complete a magic seal to... Wait, what was that? Whatever. I'm sure it's nothing. Just like this boss fight was. Venturing deeper into the castle, you should have at some point encountered this door. It's in the grass forest area. It's one of the earliest areas in the castle, so I hope you found it. You can't enter it. Looks like you're going to need a stronger magic seal. Guess we should keep searching the castle. At some point during your search, you will find the other would-be candidate, Dario. This guy's also a chump and goes down somewhat easily. It's odd though, they set him up to be a tough fight by making it appear like he was too much for Julius to deal with. But that's not true? While it happened back when Julius was 19, when he straight up killed Dracula, when Dracula himself was supposed to be at the height of his power, but this random 37-year-old guy was just too much for him. I get that Jay is pushing 60 in this game, but dude, really? This guy? He was too much? When you fight him, it's one of the easiest one-sided fights. I've played Julius mode. I know what he can do. I get it's for the sake of the story, Julius has to lose or whatever for rising stakes, but it's just, this isn't it. After you slap this guy around for a few minutes, he gets mad and Celia shows up and just kind of walks away with Dario. Why didn't Soma do anything here? By this point, you have a decent selection of powers, and if you keep up with weapon crafting, you should have a pretty solid damage dealer by now. A few well-placed shots should have been enough to take her out. Or, again, if Soma being here was such a problem, where's Arcado? If they're keeping tabs on Soma, this would have been a prime time to swoop in and just wrap it all up. Arcado does show up at some point, and he gives Soma a seemingly useless item and then just kind of dips out. The in-game reasoning for Arcado not being around is because Soma asked him to keep tabs on Mina, which just tells that they knew Soma was going to go here, even though they explicitly told him not to. What is this narrative? It feels so haphazardly slapped together. Anyway, they leave. And now you just kind of wander around the castle some, find all the little trinkets and souls you want and or need to progress the story. So here's where things can get kind of interesting. It's a bit late into the game, but you know what, that's fine. There's a few paths that can open up for you. You can, at any time, head up the final approach and go fight Dario again. This time, though, he's being juiced up, and there's a giant fire demon that's kind of hidden in a mirror that you can see. This is feeding Dario some new power. Now, assuming that you did a bunch of exploring, you have likely found other mirrors, which probably means you can do something with those mirrors. But if you didn't search the castle to its fullest, you likely lack this power. So, if you beat Dario while he's being possessed like this, you'll trigger an ending. It's not much of an ending, though. Everything comes crashing down. Arcado and Soma just kind of shrug at each other. Soma mentions that after he beat Dimitri, a strange soul-like object entered his body, and that's it. They offhandedly mention that they should look into it, and the game ends right there. Lame. This is lame. It's a weak ending. It's bad. obviously that's meant to be the worst possible ending, so alright. If you do find the somewhat secret boss Paranoia while you're exploring the castle, that's a actually pretty fun fight, and it's broken down into a back-to-back gauntlet kind of deal. You will claim that power, which allows you to enter mirrors. So okay, cool. It's a great name for a mirror power, by the way. Everyone gets a little bit of an uncanny feeling from mirrors every now and again, and paranoia is probably the perfect word to describe that. We've all been there, I think, right? Anyway, with that power under your control, you can head back to go fight Dario, only this time, enter the mirror. This fight is leagues better than Dario, the flame demon Agni. So good. I should say, for as much as I'm letting loose on the overall story here, the gameplay is great. All the bosses and the fights are fun and can be played in just about any way you want. Soma's soul powers are just so versatile that you can really set up for any fight with relative ease. Once you defeat Agni and exit the mirror, Dario just kind of runs off like the little baby that he is. Alright, so now what? Celia is without her two prime candidates, and now Soma has free reign over the entire castle. Well, going back into the back room of the arena that you fought Dario in gives you the last magic seal, and with that you can finally enter this door in the early areas of the castle, coming back full circle. Entering this room triggers a cutscene. Celia seems to have found Mina at some point and brought her here. I guess Arakato was like on break or something? I don't know. Celia gloats that she will usher in a new Dark Lord one way or another and kills Mina right in front of Soma. This goes about as well as you would expect. In an homage to Symphony of the Night and I guess just Dracula as a whole, having Mina strung up and killed on a cross, like Lisa all those hundreds of years ago, awakens a deep, dark power in Soma, and he embraces the title of Dark Lord. For her prize, Celia gets to be the first to die at Soma's newfound Dark Lord powers. Cutting away, we see Julius upset that he has to start a new cycle of battles with a new Dark Lord, and Arakato follows, lamenting that Soma didn't have Mina's talisman on him. They both prepare to fight once again. This is another bad ending, but I'll give Dawn of Sorrow this much, at least this one has some substance to it. It's way better than the last fake out ending, that's for sure. Getting this ending unlocks Julius mode, which has its own little story, a sort of what if kind of scenario. Assuming, however, that you weren't a goober, you would have equipped Mina's talisman, and when entering this room with Mina and Celia in it, the scene plays out just a bit differently. Having that talisman equipped means when Celia kills Mina and Soma starts his transformation, Arakato will walk in and is all like,
No! That is not Solid Snake!
That's not Mina, that's just a doppelganger. I don't know why Soma needs to have this item equipped on him for that scene to play out, but that's what the game calls for. Listen, I'm gonna level with you. This is dumb. Story-wise, this is just dumb as hell. What difference does this little trinket really make? The idea is that it's a reminder of Mina, right? Like, I need to remember my loved one. She gave me this and I love her. I get that it's important and it's part of the story between the two of them. I can respect what it is supposed to symbolize. Gameplay-wise, however, the difference is literally either Arakato walks in and saves Soma, or he doesn't. And I find it highly unlikely that Arakato would just hang back being all like, no, he didn't put on the talisman. Guess I'll just let this happen. Arakato walking in should not be dependent on this one item. For the, third time? If Soma succumbing to the Dark Lord powers was such a big deal, then Arakato should have been on this kid like white on rice. Or at least someone should have been on him. Hell, I'd take the horn dog hammer being all like, nah man, that's a fake. It would have better served the game if Mina's talisman had some sort of secret bonus attached to it or something. It's so odd that the game does this. Now, to be fair, Symphony of the Night did a very similar thing when fighting Richter. You needed to find an item that would let you see things. But at least that game didn't force feed you the answer when you got it wrong and killed Richter. You had to figure that out through paying attention to the game and what it's trying to tell you. You had to find a bunch of secrets to get to the final area of the game. Here it's like, oh well, too bad, you lose. Anyway, here's the right answer, you jackwagon. It's not satisfying either. It's not like Symphony of the Night, where you still technically have to fight Richter, but now you just aim at the little floating green orb. The difference is literally how lazy Arakato is. Either you have it on and he struts in, or you don't, and that's it, you lose. Why is the correct ending being held back by Arakato and the 5 steps he needs to take to stop Soma from going full Dracula? This narrative is bad, it's bad and poorly thought out. All that aside, once Soma calms down, thanks to Arakato, that dark soul pops out and just kind of takes over the doppelganger. You remember the dark soul, right? After kind of killing Dimitri, it just flew into Soma and everyone was like, oh, that's weird. Anyway, Soma, we can't have you here. Go ahead and leave. Well, that soul was actually Dimitri, and he revived himself somehow. Coming back in the doppelganger's body, he tells everybody that he copied Soma's power of dominance, and then they just straight up leave. Again, Soma and Arakato are right there. Why didn't they just wrap this up? They could have. They both have the power to do so. After all of that, Soma links up with Julius, who is all but out of commission now. Julius uses his powers to unseal a dark door that leads to the final areas of the game. Getting in here is easy enough. Going through this mine, we encounter Death. Death is here and brings nothing to the story. You would think he would do something, considering Soma's link to the Dark Lord, but no. So, one Death fight later, and Death kind of just dips out, and Soma enters a door. This door leads to a weird pocket dimension where things get real wacky. This area is distorted and places are a bit disjointed on the map. Well, at least it feels that way. Realistically, it's just a box. Entering the final arena of this area, we find Arakato taking a knee and Dimitri standing tall like he did something. Seriously, how are these people who have defeated Dracula before getting their collective stuff kicked in by these literal jobbers? Dimitri says that he beat Arakato because of a sacrifice and he claimed dominance over a ton of demons. Some very powerful ones apparently in record time. We see Celia get blasted away from her cross and Dimitri does the same thing to Arakato before losing it. Because he's only copying Soma's power, he gets torn open from the inside out by Menace, a demon made from hundreds of other demons fused inside of Dimitri. I guess Dimitri couldn't keep each demon's soul segregated or something like Soma can, so they all fused into this thing. I don't know. Anyway, this fight it's fine. You know what? No, it's honestly kind of weak. Hit the glowy heads and you'll take it out in no time. Just, it's a weak final fight, man. Portrait of Ruin had an awesome final fight. So did Order of Ecclesia. Hell, Aria of Sorrow, this game's direct prequel, had a way better final fight. This sucks. I'm sorry, it sucks. It's slow, it has limited attacks that you can read like a book, and the only vaguely threatening thing are these flying purse demons. And they're only threatening because they fly in from off screen and can divert some magical attacks. The coolest part about this is that Menace is like 3 stories tall, and that's it. That's the coolest part about this guy. What is this game? It wraps up, like usual, with Soma and everyone getting out of the castle as it comes crashing down. The crew is safe. Soma wonders about if the world really needs the balance of a Dark Lord to counter God, and I don't know, maybe. No one really has an answer for him. Arakato says some cryptic stuff. They just kind of push past all that and have a big ol' anime laugh about it. Mina shows up. Julius says Soma is whipped. Yeah, you see what I did there? Wordplay. And like, that's it. That's the end of the story. I'd say I have no words, but that's a lie. So, okay. All right, let's take a break real quick. Bring it down a little bit. If you thought we were heading straight into final thoughts, no, not yet. Not yet. I have some things I really, really need to talk about. For now, though, let's just take a minute, gather our thoughts, maybe do some subscribing and some liking. Look, I'm putting my neck on the line here, all right? This game is loved by a good chunk of this fan base. The least he could do for me is a little comforting pat on the subscribe button or something, you know? Yeah? No? Yeah? Yeah, it's fine. Okay, all right. You feeling good? I'm feeling okay. Well, sorta. Whatever, let's get back into it. Right, here's the thing. On a gameplay level, this game is good. I enjoyed my time with it. When I was just playing the game to progress. The bosses are fun, the tactical soul system is here, And as a game, it plays well. That, however, is where my praise for this game ends. Conceptually, what was this game supposed to be? As far as I could tell, Iga just wanted to expand on the tactical soul system, and okay, I guess, but the plot that surrounds this want is nothing. It's the biggest nothing burger ever. The game treads the exact same ideas that Aria did. Soma can't get too close to the problem because he might become Dracula. There's a crazed cult that wants to bring back Dracula. Julius in here, and he does next to nothing. Arcado is here and does next to nothing. Yoko is here and does nothing. Hammer's here and sells some stuff, but ultimately is nothing. None of these characters do anything. Yeah, the plot happens, but it happens in spite of all of them, and not because of any of them. In fact, this plot could have never happened, and I think Castlevania might be better if it hadn't. Or, if this game really needed to be a thing, then they could have come up with something better than, hey kids, what if instead of one Dark Lord candidate there were two now, huh? This story did nothing to move the needle in any direction. I still can't believe they let Arcado and Julius lose to these guys, these literal numbskulls. What are they supposed to be? Because they come off as dumb and trite. They aren't a threat. They never were. The fights against them are so dumb. You're telling me that Julius goddamn Belmont lost to this peaked in high school jock loser? And that Alucard, the son of Dracula, lost to this guy who looks like he wins the gold at the Well Actually event at his local city hall? These heroes have fought and beat Dracula, the Dark Lord, not candidates, the real deal, and walked away the victor. How is it that Skull and Bulk over here even had a chance? They should have been taken out with a stern look. And don't get me started with how Arcado did nothing. Literally nothing. How are you going to have Alucard not be more involved in this? Why was the talisman the make or break for Alucard to step in and calm Soma down? It just doesn't make any sense. This game's plot was lost somewhere along the way. I can't begin to understand how this game's story came together so shoddily when the next two games are leaps and bounds better in this regard. And then there's how everyone told Soma, no, don't go there, don't get involved, but he did, and no one did anything to stop him. It wasn't like Aria, where he just accidentally found himself in the thick of it. He ran head first into this, and everyone knows that he's Dracula reincarnated. Why wasn't he being watched at all? It's like having a nuke, armed, ready to go off at the drop of a hat. But somebody's like, it seems like it's in control of itself. I'm sure nothing will go wrong. And then nobody keeps an eye on it. Soma has the potential to be the most dangerous entity, period. And he shows up to this place that is actively looking to bring forth a new Dark Lord. Why? What is this? Nope, just gonna let this teenager run around a castle absorbing souls and getting closer and closer to realizing his possible evil self. Oh, and on the topic of the castle, boy, I hope you like exploring it. And only it. You will get no other places to explore. Sure, the areas of the castle are somewhat different, and there's the village right before this, but that's it. There is an endgame area that's kind of trippy, a little pocket dimension or something, but otherwise, it's all castle all the time, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't like the layout of this version of the castle. It's kind of all over the place and just boring, except one spot. There's one spot that's pretty cool, but that's only because of the music and the implication that it's the early area of Castlevania 1. It's a super fun callback to that game, and really all the games that use a very similar first level layout. I will say, there are some spots that are legit fun and interesting to explore, but they are so few and far between. Otherwise, it's just castle walls, plants, water, tower, guest house. I'm not really sure what this area is supposed to be, but yeah. When I think of a Castlevania game that uses exclusively the castle but still manages to keep it fun and interesting, I either think of Symphony of the Night because its level design was about as good as it could be, and or the first Castlevania because, yeah, that game takes place exclusively in the castle and each level has a fun and unique area to traverse. Something about Dawn just doesn't click in the same way. The design of the levels are passable, but just barely. Even the save rooms and teleport rooms are oddly placed around the map. It just doesn't feel like tight and good level design. These are things that would be addressed in the follow-up titles, Portrait of Ruin and Order of Ecclesia, and rightfully so. This castle is just bad. The layout is terrible. I'll give it credit for trying, but like I'm giving it a C- for effort. On the topic of things that are better in the future games, the grind. At least they're better in the sense that they're not functionally busted. It might feel like it sometimes, but believe it or not, the drop rates are correctly working in Portrait of Ruin and Order of Ecclesia. In Dawn? No, not at all. The luck stat apparently is bugged out. Increasing luck should have an effect on the drop rates of things, both souls and items, but it doesn't. Getting that luck stat up does nothing except waste time. The Soul Eater ring does work, thankfully, but not as well as you would think it would. It only ups the drop chance by like a tiny amount. If you thought the back and forth grind of Portrait of Ruin was bad for weapon mastery, man, let me tell you something about the soul grind. Don't do it. Just don't. Spare yourself the pain and just play the game. If you must grind souls for any reason, I wish you all the best. Filling out the compendium isn't all that bad, but don't go for max level souls. It can take tens of minutes to get a single drop. Now, you might get lucky, 'tis the nature of RNG after all, but every enemy, minus a small handful, has a soul to collect, and I mean, that kind of mind-numbing time killing is just not fun. I made a funny joke about it in Portrait of Ruin, but at least when weapon grinding, I had an endpoint and it was guaranteed. Those monsters would give skill points and I could increase the points earned. I would do that again over the soul grind. I never want to soul grind ever again.
I just wanted the soul.
The messed up part was, I remember looking back at this game prior to me replaying it and thinking, yeah, it's fine. It's pretty good, actually. I played this back when it was out on the DS. I remember handing it to a friend of mine to borrow back in high school. He beat it and handed it back to me a few weeks later, and he said, I took a look at your file to see what it had, and I've never seen a game so complete before in my life. Now, to be fair, we were both like 15, 16 at the time, so I mean, not a whole lot of experience to draw on as far as completing games is concerned, but I did beat this game front to back. I unfortunately don't have that cart anymore. It got lost in the great disaster of 2009, but it's not like I had it out for this game. I have just played better games since this, two of which came out after this one in the same franchise. Hell, Aria was better, and that came out on the Game Boy Advance. I can respect that Iga and the team wanted to try their hands at the tactical soul system again, and I think they finally found a good, logical endpoint with Miriam and her shard system in Bloodstained. But it's too much here, man. The ability to make every monster have meaning is cool. It makes the player want to engage with as many creatures as possible. But in doing that, you create unnecessary bloat. Some souls are just flat out better than others, which means that eventually everybody finds the optimal setup, and they never really deviate from that. This has the opposite effect. Now every creature becomes less of an exciting game of chance, and it becomes more like a chore for soul maxing or for item crafting. I think this game was misguided. I feel like it could have been so much better if they just gave it a bit more time in the early stages of development. Look, I know I just spent what must have felt like the entire video bashing this game for all of its faults, of which there are many, but I can respect if this is one of your favorites. There is a lot to like here, and for the most part, the game as a whole is good. I did have fun with it. It's worth playing, but not for the story. You're not playing it for that. You're playing Dawn of Sorrow for the tactical soul system and the love of the game, or maybe if you really liked the characters. I will say I did like the few different endings that this game can send your way if you kind of just coast through the story. I know at least some people just barreled right into the Dark Soma ending because you didn't equip that talisman. Topic of the Dark Soma ending, I did mention that doing that unlocks the Julius mode, which is, as per usual in these alternate game modes, fairly fun. I will say he doesn't move like Richter does, no drug-fueled rage running here, just a light jaunt through the castle. You can and will eventually find both Yoko and Alucard in the castle. Both have a few words about what's going on, and they bring up some interesting points about the ordeal. Yeah, like I mentioned in the story bit, this mode acts as a sort of what-if, and more or less continues on from the moment Soma gave in to the darkness. He takes over the castle as its new lord, and Julius and crew need to fight their way through it all, in a group that mirrors Trevor, Sypha, and Alucard back in Castlevania 3. It's a nice throwback for sure, and on a nostalgic note, it's fairly neat to play. Minus the slow walking speed of Julius, I do think this mode is way more fun, if only because the game is less about the back and forth soul grind, and is really only focused on the path you need to take in order to get to Soma. You can go off the beaten path, and you can change characters on a whim, so it's fairly flexible. Between all three of them, you have plenty of ways to navigate the castle and dispatch monsters. It's rather funny looking though. The sprites, you can clearly tell that Alucard doesn't really fit in. It's like this in most of the Castlevania games, actually. Many of the sprites are clearly ripped from other games, and they may or may not have a different art style. And no, I'm not just talking about like the anime aesthetic. Like, Alucard was clearly in a game that had a different art direction and sticks out when placed next to Julius or even Yoko. Have you ever seen Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and somebody has like a Morgan on their team and you see how much she sticks out compared to everybody else? Yeah, that's Alucard here, and it's pretty funny. Julius mode has many of the same bosses, but you don't need to worry about magic seals. Julius is just so overwhelmingly strong that he flatlines every monster before they can utilize the magic circle. Really makes me wonder how he lost to Bulk over there, but no, I won't let that go. It's so dumb. The Soma fight at the end has a cool painting of what people think is supposed to be Matthias Kronkvist, his original human self, and if that's true, that's a nice touch. The battle against Soma is fun, and he uses a bunch of different powerful attacks based on his soul powers. It's super cool. Honestly, one of the best things about this game. Other unlocks include a boss rush mode, and that's kinda it. I mean, hard mode exists, but try that if you really want an extra kick in the pants. Overall, I'd say the game is fun. It has some really sore spots, but it's fun nonetheless. And at the end of the day, you aren't really playing this for its gripping narrative. You're playing it for the tactical soul system and maybe some casual demon slaying. There are better Castlevania games out there, 2 of which are on the DS or Dominus Collection, and several on other platforms as well. But there are certainly worse games in this franchise. If Aria of Sorrow left you wanting more Soma and crew, then Dawn of Sorrow is probably what you're looking for. Or, if you want to check out how the gameplay has evolved through the generations, then this is a decent starting point for the DS trilogy. Oh man, I try not to be negative about things. That's just not really my style, but this game had me feeling a certain way. I know it's a bit different from what I've done in the past, but I hope it was worth the watch. I don't know, this game just felt like it wasn't necessary to me, but hey, what do I know, I guess. I want you to know, though, that if it's one of your favorites, then I respect it. It just doesn't really jive with me the same way that the others do. But hey, that's what makes things like this video fun, yeah? Maybe I convinced you to take a harder look at this game, or maybe I set you down a path of righteous fanboy flaming. Either way, thanks for hanging out at least. Let me know your thoughts about the game down below, and let me know if you have any counterpoints. I'm curious to know your take on it. In the meantime, if you want to take a look at the other 2 DS games, I have those videos for you right about here. Alright, till next time, keep it clean.